MyData Global. You can find a lot of information on the mydata.org, but the most important thing is to empower the individuals and to give them self-determination about their personal data. So don't let other organizations use their data. There's a declaration which you can sign if you support the organization. And I don't make it very long, so you find all this information on mydata.org. Then why is mydata.org doing that? Personal data is everywhere. And as you can see from the logo, there are a number of areas where personal data is used. So today it's more health related. In 1 week's time, it will be mobility related. We have another meetup where we'll go into that in more detail, specifically with integrated billing processes. I don't go through all the details here, but just to make you aware, there is a lot of places where personal data is stored. How did the personal data develop? At the very beginning, the situation was chaotic. So everybody was talking to everybody. Interoperability was rather poor. Then the big digitals came into play and they started to collect data very systematically. And they are still in the understanding that they are owning the data, which is actually not right. And to make it human-centric, the data is actually owned by the individual. There will be legislations. Basically, it's a question of a society, and legislations are developing to encompass this situation. So, to the next one. The vision of MyData, still with the same logo, is to control their own data. And as you will hear from Christian, he has a platform to do pretty much that. So, to enforce the human rights of personal data. Making that very short. So there are basically three principles, formal and actionable. So it's not just paperware, it's something what we can do about. Then it's basically about the consent. Then the second thing is the protection. So the individual has the power to use their own data, and they want to move from closed systems to open ecosystems. So moving away from silos, being able to exchange data as we are doing that on paper today, so that you can do it in the same way in a digital world. Moving on to the next one, very quickly. Again, it's human-centric, individual is in the center, it's empowered, it's portable, there's transparency about what is happening with the data and the interoperability, so we can exchange the data. That's a very quick rundown. A few words about the MyData Zurich Hub. So we are quite new. We started early last year, so in first quarter of 19. So we had a kickoff meeting, and then there's also a website which is currently hosted by a Swiss Data Alliance, with Andre as the president being in today's call. So Andre, if you have questions later on, you can certainly ask him. And Swiss Data Alliance is hosting MyData Zurich activities. We had our first workshop in September 19, and the objective is actually to offer hands-on workshops where we can specifically do things with our data, which is a little bit difficult right now with COVID, but upcoming workshops will be hands-on again. So I'll come to that in the outlook. So moving on, we can skip that one. We did a little video on one of the last events. You can Google that on YouTube. It's also on the past workshops. There's a link to the video. I don't go through that today. Who's the team? It's the four of us. It's Andre, who's present, and Daniela, Pauline, and myself. And we are focusing on these hands-on workshops, as already mentioned. And with that said, we are already in the handover part. Christian Kunz is the CEO of Bits About Me. And I'm very glad Christian took the time to explain what Bits About Me is doing. Not so much in detail today. We had a workshop already, but specifically about the COVID tracing. So, and have a look on the logo of Bits About Me. So I think that will look familiar to you. with that said, Christian, thank you very much, and stage is all yours.
Cool. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Pete, for the intro. Let me try to grab your screen now. Yes, so can you see our website now? Bits About Me is a member of. Do you all see that?
Yes, you can see that.
Okay, that was just my quick proof that we are indeed a MyData global member and founding member. 2016 was my first attendance to the MyData conference in Helsinki. That's also, I think, where I met Andre for the first time, and the rest is pretty much history. Our model is very much inspired by MyData. What Bits About Me does is, in a way, an operationalization of MyData. And the whole contact tracing discussion picked up speed in March or even earlier. We found that is another great example where MyData can really add a lot of value to these kind of discussions and these kind of products. And today I want to explain to you a little bit the story, how we got there, a little bit about technology, but not so much, more about the actual what changes if you're really serious about the MyData concept in this contract tracing. So let me start the presentation. Maybe just a very quick intro to my history. So now I'm working on Bits About Me for a little over 3 years. We founded Bits About Me January 2017 with my co-founder Christoph. We know each other from Ricardo, where I was CEO and Christoph was the CTO. And when we sold the company to Tamedia, we had the opportunity to think out of the box what we want to do next. And that was the spring when GDPR was first decided in 2016. And we figured there is not just a real purpose that we're going after, but also business opportunity and giving people back control over their data. I spent quite some time on the dark side using consumer data in large amounts at Ricardo, but even more at eBay, where I was running the eBay advertising group, and we were some of the first ones in the days to use big e-commerce consumer data at scale. And I was always fascinated by the opportunities and the business models and how much technology and how much money you can make with it, but scared by the fact that it's all happening in the background. The user doesn't know anything, and it was not sustainable. And then thankfully GDPR really changed the game. And I have a history in management consulting and a PhD in physics. So dealing and using data is kind of the red thread throughout my career. Bits About Me, we are based in Bern. We're in the train station in Bern in the old SBB offices. Right now, we're still the only ones. SBB is not there, doesn't dare to come back to the office. We are back. We actually never went. We're only five people in the office, so we can take the risk. Here you see the pictures of the team and some of our PR events, and also the partners that work with us on the consuming side of data, because what we do is a data marketplace, and we take or consumers can sell or share their data with companies, and by now we have about almost 50 companies that work with us on that model. And that was the world coming into February and having a very commercial approach, having salespeople out in the field and visiting clients. And then the lockdown came and everything changed. And on many fronts for us, I'm not going to go into details, but as a startup looking for investors, it's not an easy time right now. But so far we managed, so far so good. And so we were also faced with this whole discussion about contact tracing. And I don't think I have to explain this anymore. If I now assume something as common knowledge, please stop me at any time, right? And we can clarify some of the technical aspects. Very happy to do that, but otherwise I will brush over this quite quickly, because I think you probably have heard and read about this quite a few times. The idea came up when I think in the early days of the pandemic, we heard stories from Korea and China and Singapore, where these countries launched apps that supported the contact tracing quite successfully. Typically in a centralized model where the government just made the apps mandatory and collected a lot of data centrally, and then also imposed a great risk of that data might be abused at some point. When the Europeans started to think about the problem, they found a way to do contact tracing in a much more privacy protecting way, and that is through Bluetooth. And that's what this whole new technology is now all about, that you use the Bluetooth sending and receiving capabilities of smartphones to understand if people are close to each other. Bluetooth is not new. It's actually everywhere. It's one of those more hidden things, what happens to our data. The whole Internet of Things and how this is actually also very personal data is not talked about so much yet, I would say, but Bluetooth sensors and senders and receivers are everywhere, in every modern car, in smart homes, in venues. We carry them around, not just with our smartphone, but all the other gadgets. There's basically a Bluetooth client in everything that has a USB charger, I would say. So this technology has a lot of coverage, and there are these things which are these Bluetooth beacons, right? And that's a technology where it's all based on. This is one company that produces these funny shaped beacons, but there's many others. And that's not a small industry. It was actually Apple who started it. 2013, they came up with the iBeacon. Then Google followed with their own system, classical Apple versus Google Play, closed system versus open system, pretty good data protection versus pretty open bar with respect to data. This has come a long way and is growing very fast. So it's almost doubling every year the amount of beacons that we have. It's one of the reasons why Google doesn't need your GPS data anymore. There's so many beacons around. These guys know if you use their apps where you are anyway, without reading your location data. The typical use cases for the beacons in the normal world are shopping applications, where you can get these push ads based on your location. You can find it in movies, theaters, in gyms, in public transport. There's many beacons around on train stations and buses, airports, of course. There's beacons that are little tags to expensive equipment. For example, in hospitals, they're used. Obviously in stadiums, in museums, in art exhibitions, where you have apps that show you the kind of story about a picture when you're close to it. In hotels, where they check, are you in your room? Have you checked in? All these kind of things. It's all done with Bluetooth, of course. And these billboards, they're very active Bluetooth beacons. When you have these smart billboards, they always want to know how many people are around them. And if you look at a modern shopping mall, you find another beacon every 5 meters, right? So that's why once you know where these beacons are, you know where the person is pretty much at any time. And that's how this technology kind of behind the scenes has developed and is now very much everywhere. And it was created by Apple, and I think it was created with all the right intentions, in the sense that it was built, I mean, and we talk about Bluetooth low energy, which is a little different from the other Bluetooth, but for everything I'm talking about is Bluetooth low energy, which is the kind of Bluetooth where the beacon only sends data So the beacon doesn't know anything. It's a very stupid device. It only sends, I'm here, and I have this this random number. So there's really very little that could happen with this kind of signal. Your phone can pick it up, and then is when things get interesting, because it depends what picks it up. As soon as an app picks it up, then that app becomes the risk to your privacy, because the app then knows where you are. And there are apps where this makes total sense. And there are many apps, especially free apps, that are just basically scanning every step you make, and every shopping center, mall, whatever. So there's a lot of ad tech going on based on Bluetooth. Apple made it in a way that it's hard to track people, because as a user, you have an address on your phone, and that address changes every 10 to 15 minutes. It's different for different devices. Sometimes it's fast changing, sometimes slower, but it's supposed to change, and it's supposed to be random and not resolvable. So you're supposed to end up on the lower right of this tree, but that typically works for expensive devices. So your iPhone does it, your Samsung, I mean, your smartphone typically is here, pretty well privacy protecting when they send these IDs around. But your your cheap whatever headphone from AliExpress does not, right? So just be aware that there's many devices that always send the same number, and you can be perfectly tracked when you run around with this device, because it's always, I mean, people know when you're coming back. And that's a little bit of the dark side of Bluetooth, and that's also where I think some of the fears are coming from, that this technology can be abused to track people, because once the information goes into an app and it's connected with location information about the beacons, that's when things get a little sketchy. And of course, there are beautiful devices like this scanner here, which are put in some central location. And then they are very different from a simple Bluetooth beacon, because they can receive data and they see every smartphone that is in the perimeter. And not just for Bluetooth, they also track Wi-Fi and GPS. I mean, these things track pretty much everything. And if someone installs a device like that, they have a very good read of not who, but how many people are frequenting in a certain space. And depending if you change or not change your ID, that's when the risk of being tracked is coming about. There's always some confusion of where this Bluetooth is. You can switch it off and on. It's not just Bluetooth, it's also location services. So in your phones, when you say location services, most people think it's GPS, but it's also Bluetooth, because if you log into a beacon, then you can be located. And if you really want to stop being tracked from these things, you have to switch off the location services on your phone as well, and not just the Bluetooth. And then you can do this for certain apps where it makes sense to be location tracked, like your Google Maps, for example. But especially retail apps, I would say they're basically spying on you, so they should be clearly switched off. Anyway, I'm not going to go super deep on that, but also be aware that your cheap gadgets are happily sending Bluetooth data all the time. So that's the basics of Bluetooth, what it can do, how it can be abused, what are the risks. And now if we switch gears and think about how can this be used for contact tracing. Contact tracing, the idea is that now when the infection rate is down, that you want to grab any person that's infected very quickly and quickly check who has that person been in contact with, and then put these people in quarantine and stop the tracks of an infection. And that's the only way where the virus now can be controlled and be confined to certain groups. Typically that's done with normal offline means. People are interviewed and they call up all the friends and people have met and talk to them and say they have to get tested and go in quarantine. But you never catch everyone. The stranger that you were sitting next to on a train, you cannot get with this method because you don't know the names. And the idea is that exchanging anonymous signals between phones can be used to do that. There was a whole science developed about what is the right way to do this. So I'm not going to go into all details, but the idea is that there is no personal information exchanged, only an anonymous identifier between the two people. And then if someone is tested positive, you can kind of recalculate from these identifiers who the person has been in contact with, and then the person can be alerted. And that's the key principle, what the new COVID apps, so the Swiss COVID and in Germany, the Corona Warn app, what they're doing. And well, I'm going to jump over this. Yeah. And then we had a lively debate, because using Bluetooth is one thing, but then what to do with the data is another. And there was one camp that said everything needs to be. Yeah? Someone has a question? No? I continue. So there is, I would call them the purists, that said everything needs to be completely decentral, anonymous. You can go very, very far to make these things extremely, extremely safe and secure in terms of privacy, but you also lose information along the way. And there was the other guys, things like the health authorities and governments, who wanted more data, and more insights, right? Wanted like spatial data, GPS data, in addition to that, which if you decentralize everything, you don't get this kind of data. If you decentralize everything, in simple terms, the only thing the app does is that you get an alert when you are at risk, and that's it. Right? You don't get any other data. In the central approach, there's different ways, different shades of gray, let's call it, where you can capture additional data, and which goes all the way to the kind of Chinese approach, where it's completely centralized and the government has all the data, which is clearly something that we don't want in Europe. But for me, it's an open question. What is the optimum here? And the way this discussion was held, and there was different consortia and whatever, it sounded like a big zero-sum game where either you protect privacy and you lose information, or you get information and then you have a privacy risk. And that's unfortunately, like in many other ways, in many other situations, it seems that there is this zero-sum game. But in the end, and that's kind of what I want to get across today, it doesn't have to be. What happened then was a huge discussion in academics and politics, and a lot of money was spent, lots of work done. And I mean, the Swiss are, I think, on the forefront of the decentral approach, and I think it's a great success story how the guys from EPFL and others even got Google and Apple to join forces and get on that track. And now also the German app is on the same approach, but it was a huge debate, and it cost a lot of time and money to have that discussion. So here are some early scribbles from the Swiss COVID app, but I'm gonna jump over this and not explain it again. I'm sure you have heard it all before. And that's what I would call is kind of on the very far end of the privacy protecting side of things. There was a great quote by Marcel Salate, where he said, it's actually a very boring app, because what it does is nothing, right? No, I mean, most people will never hear anything from this app. And only if you hear it, it's kind of too late, but then it says, oh, you'll go get tested and maybe go and get into quarantine. So what the app, that's the single use case of this app. It's kind of a black box. I mean, the user doesn't see any of the data. It's kind of, the data is even protected from the user who collects it. And it cannot be used for anything else. So super private, super secure, but we're losing a little bit on utility and what else could be done. There's also some general challenges, not just about the Swiss app, but about all these apps in general. I mean, there's always an issue of trust. I mean, do I trust whoever built this app? It's now open source, and what are the legal implications in Switzerland? We had to wait for a law to be passed in order to get it live now, hopefully soon. There's actually also a huge inaccuracy of Bluetooth. If you play with it, you will find out that detecting a distance from a Bluetooth signal is very, very difficult. And there's a huge error bar. So if that person has been a meter away or 5 meters away, is very hard to judge. These apps have to be always on. They have to run in the background to consume battery, and they might piss off some users if their battery are drained quickly. There's also an issue that it only works for the latest generation of smartphones, and people with other phones, people without phones are not included, right? So there's always a segment of the population who cannot benefit from this. And that's a very basic thing when you talk about incentivizing users and why should be users doing that the individual user who uses the app and then reports that he's infected actually does have very little benefit from that. He's doing something for society, and fortunately many people do that, but the individual user has only trouble because now he needs to get in quarantine, and there's really not much that a user would get. And in order to work, we have to a pretty high adoption rate. They always quote the 60%. That's maybe a little high, but this app needs to be mass adopted. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So great technology, but I think of quite a few things that are open to be wished for. And that's where, when we looked at that, we thought, guys, classical MyData case, right? Why? Again, no one is asking the user, right? The user is treated as dumb. He cannot see the data. He cannot do anything with it. And it's kind of a very passive way the user is using this app, right? And that's where we thought there could be another way where users actually get the data, actively get the data, and can do something with it and can decide what to do with it. And the way we look at that is to take MyData really seriously and apply it to this case. And that solves many of these trade-offs between centralized and decentralized can be solved in such an approach. And that's not new for us. That's basically where the entire Bits About Me platform is based on. And the way it works, some people have seen that before, some of you, a number of times, but I still don't want to do it again to explain quickly how the platform works and why this kind of solves both decentral and central. What the platform does is, in a decentral approach, users can collect the data. They collect the data in their own encrypted personal data store, which only the user has a key. And they can import all kinds of data from all big data players, Google, Facebook, Miko, Cumulus, banks, whatever, and put it in their data store so they have a complete overview and transparency what data is there. It's all based on GDPR, Article 20, right, for data portability. And we have built all these importers so users can do this easily to get the data back and get it under their own control. And that all existed. There was Bits About Me all along. And what we did is now we added Bluetooth data to that. And for that, we needed an app. We did not have a native app before, so we had to build an app that can use the same protocols as the COVID apps and listen to Bluetooth signals. And that's what we did. And then this data goes the exact same flow as all the other data. It first goes into the user's PDS. Users in full control. No data is shared with anyone. It can be deleted at any time. It can be inspected. It's under full control of the user. And that's why it checks all the boxes for a decentral approach. But on our platform, we add what we call a data marketplace. And it adds the option to centralize the data and share the data if the user wishes to do so. And that's where you can have, in a way, you can have it both, right? You can have the full protection, but if someone volunteers to share data, they can do it. They can share data with health authorities, epidemiologists, or social scientists. In any shape or form, the data can be shared, because various institutions can ask on this marketplace, can ask the individual user, are you willing to share your data? And if the user says yes, then the data is anonymized and then shared with these third parties. But everything is completely voluntary. No one is forced to do that. I mean, only the ones who want to share, and it can be stopped at any time, and the data can also be deleted at any time. So many of these requirements for a decentral approach still hold true, but there's other options if people are willing to take another step that they can do and put their data to work because it's theirs, it's my data, in a more meaningful way. Now we're going to do a quick check on the time, because what I would do is now to quickly show you how that works on the platform. And for that, I need to go to another screen. Now see the platform, I hope. So I'm going to log in. I'm logging into the normal Bits About Me account. I mean, it's the same what all of you would see if you log in and create an account. Here's the app. In order to get Bluetooth data, you need to download an app. We only have it for Android. Apple makes that almost impossible to do what we do. Only government apps can do it. So we focus on Android. On an Android app, you can collect the data. I'm now showing you the web version, which looks the same if you run it from an app or the web. So if I sign in, that's where my personal data store is decrypted, which was not accessible before. Now I'm being shown my own data, and I have this dashboard where you already see some COVID features here. It normally starts that you connect data sources. So here are all the other data sources that you can connect on Bits About Me, and the two new ones that you get from the native app are now Bluetooth data and also GPS data. And once this is connected, you can see some information on what we call the dashboard. So your digital life, basically. This is an overview of all kinds of data sources. And the first applet now is this donut that counts my Bluetooth connections of the day. So today I saw 156 COVID apps in Bern and 554 Bluetooth devices. That sounds a lot, right? So the app is not really live. And I already saw 156, and that is because it's double counting. COVID apps and devices change their identifier, as I said before, every 10 to 15 minutes. And that means if another person in our office has a COVID app, I'm getting a new count every 15 minutes. That's on purpose. There's no way to change that, and it also makes total sense. But that's why this number is high, and it's not 156 individual people with COVID apps. But we see this number now going up every day, right? There was always no one around. Now, if I walk through the train station, there's always someone who already has a test app. And once the real app is live, this number will go up even higher. So my circle is already completely filled, unfortunately, because what I wanted to show you is early in the morning, this thing starts building up, right? And we say, we then look at all our users, what's the average? Because no one knows if 156 is a lot or not. Am I doing well? Should I maybe slow down, or am I being responsible? No one knows. But we can tell people that at least compared to the average user, you're doing well if you're on the right-hand side, or maybe you're more on the risky side when you see and connect with lots of people. So that's what this app does, both for COVID apps and also for Bluetooth devices. So you always have a read, how am I doing on this particular day? There is another thing that we wanted to show our users, and that is the geo information, where we want to show the user where are these contacts, something that you would never know from the typical ads. And so here I can see this is my commute, this is where I live, I take the S-Bahn, And then you see the action is typically at the train station in Bern, right? And that's where you see the areas where you have lots of encounters. This is counting Bluetooth devices, so it's beacons and phones and everything, but I can also switch and say, show me only the official apps. And then the picture looks a little different, not too much different, but it's obviously a cleaner signal. But again, same principle. You always catch them where there's many people. And now I can see first, how am I doing in kind of the number of encounters that I have every day, and where are the hotspots of encounters. And other than being informed when it's already too late, I can now manage my own behavior, right? So I can say, okay, I slow down, or I avoid certain areas. These are all the things that I can see. For us, it's important that the user always has full transparency. And that you can dive deeper on this. If I go to more details, then I go in this other section of the site, which is called the statistics. And I can look, for example, at the time distribution, meaning when do I have these contacts? So it's always slow on the weekends and more busy when I'm here at the office. I can look at the various days of the week. There's no big spike on Thursday. And I can see the daily. This is my daily life, basically. This is my morning commute, lots of people on the train. Then I go into the office. This is go out and have lunch or grab my lunch somewhere at the supermarket. There's always a little spike here. Then there's more activity in the afternoon, and then there's an evening commute. At home, it's pretty quiet. I mean, this is the family with the various devices. It never goes down to zero. There's always devices sending, but you see patterns, right? So you see, where are you at risk? When are you at risk? Should you change? Should you change your behaviors? You can see what are these the contacts, right? Are they risky or not? And risky means the contact is very short, so short distance, strong signal, but also is it long in terms of time, right? And here, every bubble here is a contact. So this one here, it's an Apple device. It was 60 scans, so that it's in about an hour contact and 60 decibel. That's why it's red. So this is a close contact for about an hour with someone else who has an Apple device. Here's one that is green because the signal was not very strong, probably far away, but lots of scans. So this is a beacon that does not change the idea. And that's how we show you all the various contacts that you collect over the course of the day. And the red ones are the ones that are more critical, and then the rest you can basically forget about. We show you what kind of devices you meet. It's mostly Apple devices that you see, and then more and more official COVID apps. I think the Zoom is taking a lot of bandwidth because these charts are now getting pretty slow. So here you see what kind of Bluetooth devices are you seeing. It's Apple devices, it's Microsoft laptop computers, it's official tracking apps, and all kinds of Garmin, Samsung, whatever devices. Where is the map that we saw before? And on details, we really show you every single contact. So this is a very short one. Let's take, here's an official app for 3 minutes. We saw it here, it's right next to the office. Signal strength was 94 decibel. That is probably someone who walks by in front of the office. It's a weak signal, but we caught it 4 times, so it's a longer duration, about a few minutes, where we were exposed to that person. And that's how you can see. I have the full overview and full transparency of all your data. And now you can decide what to do with it. And that's where the other purpose of Bits About Me comes into play. You can share data, and not just contact data, but you can combine contact data, for example, with your demographics, with your age and gender, or you can combine it with your fitness data. How many steps do you do during the day? Or you can combine it, for example, with shopping data. What are you buying at Migo? And that's where we already have a collaboration with the University of Zurich. And these guys are doing a study and they want to understand how did consumer behavior change over the course of the pandemic. So the classic, did people buy more toilet paper, right? And that's why our users can share with the University of Zurich their microdata. So they see exactly what they're sharing here. It's anonymous, so they only know that this person is from Switzerland. And they share Migo and Coop data. And this is basically, this is asking for consent according to GDPR. So what data is being shared, for what purpose, and how is it processed? You have all the information about who is asking for that, how is that deal rated. And as a user, if you accept this deal, then these researchers get your shopping data, and they can analyze, has that changed over the last few months? And they also send you a survey to combine it with some questions that they have. So that's just one example how this data can be used for social science. It can be used for controlling the epidemic. I mean, the user, it's completely voluntary. The user has to opt in, has to click on these deals. Only then the data is anonymized and then being shared with whoever asks, right? And we, of course, we control, not everyone can ask, but trusted institutions have a chance to ask for various kinds of data on the marketplace. And that's the basic principle of Bits About Me, that first, the user gets full transparency about the data he or she creates, right? Or if that's contact data, if that's email data or Migo, whatever it is, you always know what you have, and you can share it if you want to. And now I'm gonna go back to my presentation. Quickly jump over those slides. Now you saw that all live. Don't have to go through this. We can do many other things as well on the marketplace, but I'm not gonna go through them right now. It's always a combination of the use cases. It's either research, can be market research, can be other kinds of research. It's quantified self, where we provide some insights and information for the users. It's about enriching CRM data in a digital transformation of a large insurance or a bank or whatever who wants to know more about their own customers. Can be used for marketing, or can be used for compliance reasons when companies, especially when the Swiss data protection law is changing, when companies have to ask for new consent. Here's a way how can they do it on the marketplace. That's just a summary of what I just showed, right? These are the types of analysis that one can do with your own data and get the insights that the other app, I mean, the official apps are not giving you any insights. So it's a very nice addition and a complementary approach to the black box apps, and you can share the data if you like to. And this one slide, that last slide, I could not resist because I just saw that on the news today that Germany paid 60, or will pay until the end of the year, 68 million for the Corona app, which is quite a hefty price tag. But that's what happens if you ask SAP and Deutsche Telekom to build the app. In Switzerland, it's more of an academic exercise, so I think the top price tag will be a lot smaller, which I like. And it costs us about 10K to develop this native addition to our marketplace. So I think there's a huge spread between these two approaches, but I think they both add interesting aspects to this whole approach. Yeah, that's it. That's my story. I hope you liked it. If you have an Android phone, please go get the app, try it out for yourself. It will become only more and more interesting every day now when more people get the official app, and you can shine some light into this black box and see what happens to your data and really live the MyData approach also when it comes to proximity data. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Christian. That was indeed very interesting. I always learn something on your presentations, although I knew quite a bit already. So really very interesting. So we are moving now into the questions, and since we are a rather small audience, I would suggest that we ask the questions directly. So we don't go through the chat function. We only do that with a large audience. So with that said, I would like to open the questions right away. Are there questions? Otherwise, I have a few, but I don't want to step in first. Not yet. Okay, so I'll start with mine actually. As an engineer, I love the technical things, of course. And about these beacons, I didn't actually realize that these beacons are so widespread. I understand the beacons are transmitting basically their own ID, and there's somewhere a registry where these beacons are listed, and you can query this ID is at that place. Is that right, Christian?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not really one big public registry, but this data is collected officially and unofficially, and all the big players know where the beacons are.
Okay, so it's half official then.
Yeah,
so,
there's no big open database where you can just go and see where is this beacon, but there's of course organizations who have their own beacons, and then there's these apps that collect it and combine it with GPS data, and so yeah, you can make the connection.
So if you know where to look, then you can find the information.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That's why I didn't hear about it probably. So about the apps, unfortunately, well, in this case, I'm on an iPhone. I understand it's difficult to get it through the App Store. Are there any plans to make an iPhone version available, or do you plan to stick with the Android?
So Apple does not allow you to track Bluetooth in the background. And without the background functionality, the app is pretty useless because no one will keep the app always on just to track the contacts. Apple and Google have now created their own API just for this. This API is the only way to do it on an Apple phone, but Apple says only one app per country in only the official government app gets access to this API. So we are out, and unfortunately we cannot build the same functionality on iOS. It's actually not just us who has that problem. Even the French app is running in the same limitations. They cannot get Apple data if they're not running in the background.
So it's not a technical limitation, it's more an organizational limitation.
It's a policy. It's an Apple policy where they say no access to the Bluetooth API.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
I would have a related question. I'm maybe a little bit more paranoid person, so my cell phone doesn't have a Google account. Is there any way to get the app on my phone via an APK or something?
I can send you the APK, yeah. But we don't have we have not the APK is not anywhere listed, but I'm very happy to ask our CTO and he can share the APK.
Okay, thanks.
If you send me an email, I will send you a link where you can get it.
That sounds perfect. A little bit of a related question. Actually, the official app has the same problem. So the official COVID app also is only available via Apple and of course the Google Play Store, but there is no APK neither. So there is a GitHub as it's open source, but the ones that you then whatever download, compile and do it for yourself doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, there was an ongoing in the last days actually there was an ongoing discussion on the danger of the open source, that the open source version could then be modified and then somehow be used to spoil the whole system by sending wrong signals into the system. How do you interpret this, or what is your take on this?
Yeah, I think I agree with the theoretical threat. I'm not sure if it's a practical threat. I think it's very much of an edge case, and at some point I think you have to be pragmatic and just do it. So I think the threat theoretically is real. We don't have that issue because our app does not notify, right? We just read. We don't. We don't have users who say I'm infected, or we also don't read the infected data back. So it doesn't affect us. For the official app, I think we went so far in making it safe that I would be super comfortable with it. But yes, there's always kind of the last loophole where it could be abused. But I think it's I wouldn't worry about that. But everyone needs it's a personal decision when you start to worry and when you.
It's not so much for a person the problem, but actually for the whole system. No, if whatever some intended hackers would just I don't know what would be the options, spin up thousands of apps that then sort of give false feedback to the system, then that would kill the whole system.
I think what needs to be most protected is the list of the infected IDs, right? Not the other ones. I mean, the other ones you can create millions and it doesn't matter. But the infected, whatever is marked as infected, there's a vetting process. I'm not sure there's a QR code now. You have to go through some official vetting before you get on that list. And that's, of course, where there is the vector of attack where the whole system could be brought down. But it doesn't have any. That's we're actually back in the real world. That's not about the digital solution. That is about how do you make sure that this is a person that actually is infected. And then, yeah, that needs to be controlled. Otherwise, it's a mess.
There was actually a very interesting article about the organizational challenges. I'll put it in as a link into this meetup so you can read it. It was a rather rare publication, but it was a really good article about all these organizational challenges.
Yeah, and it's also that's when I think you should not go too extreme in protecting all the digital flow, because there's always the parallel offline flow, right? People will still do contact tracing and they have to go with their name and their phone numbers and they will call their friends. So let's take this in perspective. Now adding another channel, which is great, but you cannot go totally to the extreme on the digital channel and do the same old stuff, just giving out names and phone numbers on the other side. Then I think the relation is just not right.
Any other questions?
I would like to ask a question. Basically, two questions. My first question is about the added value of data, because we might interpret that differently. Is there some effort, like from Bits About Me? How do you interpret the value of data? Probably my data of my shopping from Migros has some value, and my Netflix trajectory, what I should see and so on, that will be different. And probably we can try to interpret and find the value of the data. That's my first question. Second question, it's a bit looking to the future. Would you imagine a future that instead of me as a person giving my data to a company like Amazon or I don't know, Migros or Deutsche Bank in your example that I saw, but rather that somebody like Bits About It would be between me and the other company, and I would connect Bits About Me to the company, and then it would be me and Bits About Me. Would it be something to look at the future?
Absolutely. That's basically our vision. I mean, that's what we think how MyData should be operationalized, that there is a tech solution that we can easily share the data that you want to share, right? And that means you have control of what is being shared, you know who gets it, and you can stop it at any time. These are the kind of use cases that the platform does. And that's where this is basically the CRM use case, what you just described. And that is our vision for the future, yes. And we want people to have control over the data, but it needs a tech support, right? It cannot happen on every user on its own. Will not work. And to your first question, the value of data, yeah, very interesting one, and we're learning every day. We don't determine the data. We are a marketplace and auction guys, right? So we let companies and institutions offer deals and put a price out, and then users decide, is that price good enough or not? We're doing actually a large study also with the University of Zurich that tries to build a model for this willingness to share. What are the drivers? Is it really the money? Is it the purpose? Does it matter who I'm giving the data to? Does it really matter if it's anonymized? What kind of data? So that it's multidimensional. Right now we're in still early days on that, but the price is set by the company and then the user decides. We never decide. We might give the company a little bit of a hint. If you want this kind of data, you might want to give 2 francs, 3 francs, 5 francs, whatever it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do not want to monopolize the question session, but nevertheless a related question now. Do you think that whatever the normal user, the normal citizen is sort of ready and equipped in knowledge to assess what is the risk cost balance exactly for selling his data?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. I think even experts would not fully understand that. But that's part of what we're trying to solve, right? That's exactly what we're trying to solve, to give a user also an indication of what risk are you taking, and also protecting users from themselves. So you cannot, on the marketplace, you cannot share everything that you can upload. Certain things like your email, you cannot share your messages. I mean, everything that is sensitive or has consent from another person is unshareable. And some other data sources we anonymize before it can be shared. So it's part of what we offer as a service, that we protect the user to some extent. But we also expect from the user to make a sovereign decision of, the user's in the driver's seat, right? We want a user that understands to some extent what they're doing. But it's complicated. I mean, we don't even know. I mean, that's the other part of the equation. One is the price for data, the other one is the risk. And it depends on all the same factors, but it's maybe even more complicated.
Sure, thanks.
It's actually the idea of MyData to enable the user, and the Bits About Me is the platform to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically, we came back from the conference and we said, yes, that's it. That's the model. That's the way we want the world to develop, and let's build a platform that does it. And that was mixed with, if 2 guys come from online marketplaces, they build another marketplace in a way. It just couldn't help it. So that's why it now looks a little bit like an eBay or a Ricardo on the sharing side.
Other questions? There's actually one thing we had quite a while ago. Christian had a presentation more about the Bits About Me part, not so much about the COVID as today. If you are interested in another Bits About Me presentation, then put it into the comments of this meetup, and then we'll organize another one. I have to say, although I was using it for a while, I learned a lot specifically about the other side, about the marketplace side, which is not so visible for the normal user. So if you're interested about the mechanics of Bits About Me, put a note into the comment section, and then we'll coordinate with Christian to have another more in-depth presentation about Bits About Me. And first of all, try it out for yourself if you haven't yet done. So it's really interesting.
Yes. And I'm happy to distribute the APK.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be the case. So I'll start sharing my screen again. And actually, I'll start with something what I found today. Maybe I don't know if Christian has already seen that. So where is that? So, Where's my screen? Oh, I have to switch. I have to search it first. Another. Let's try another one. Okay, I'll start with the closing side. There was one article I can't find it on the web. But Christian, maybe you read about the new app of SBB, which is eating a lot of data. Did you hear about that one?
No, I've not.
It was in the media today. I can't find the screen, but I'll put the link into the comment. So SBB is obviously planning to release a new app, which is trying to make suggestions about future travel plans based on habits found so far. And there was a lot of complaint in this article about that they are asking for a lot of data, which is not really necessary for the service which they're planning to offer. So as you are in the SBB building, actually, I suggest you walk over to your SBB friends and offer them a path to bits about me and talk a little bit about data privacy to them. With that said, I'll now share my screen. So I should be able to see my screen. Go to full screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Announcing upcoming events. So we have quite a few in the pipeline in the meantime. In about 1 week's time, we have a one about privacy in mobility. It's about public transportation and integrated billing systems from a colleague from a company who is actually offering products internationally. They're building the SBB ticket systems, or a part of the ticket system. They're also building such systems in other countries. And it has quite a number of similarities between the credit card system, where you have a transaction logic to protect the privacy. And it's Andreas Bieniok, and he will tell us about data protection in the mobility area. So that's the one which is coming up next week. And feel free to share this with colleagues who might be interested. Then we have another one. This one is about the Swiss electronic health record. It's a physical meeting, and the reason is, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are aiming to offer hands-on workshops, and we are aiming to offer opening an electronic health record. So that's elektronisches Patientendossier. So that's not so much in the media right now. So it's somewhat delayed, partially due to the certification process, partially due to COVID. We hope that we can do it by then. It will be presented by the CEO of Axana, which is the largest organization in Switzerland offering these electronic health records. So in German, it's Stammgemeinschaft. And the reason why we need a physical presence is you need a verified digital identity. And you only get a verified digital identity if you show up in person. So it's not even allowed through this digital onboarding, through the webcam or other integrated cameras. You really have to show either your passport or your ID card. So that's on September 17. And then we have two more. They're still in preparation, but I nevertheless wanted to give you a heads up. One is about digital documents and signatures. We wanted to have that one a little bit early in the middle of the COVID phase. Unfortunately, they're right in a transition. Maybe you heard about Swiss ID. The Swiss ID can be used as a secure way to sign your documents, which is equivalent legally to your handwritten documents. And this one is going to be a live demonstration of what is possible today. That's actually the reason why we didn't run it so far, because so far it would have been a slide presentation, and we really want to show you what is possible today to push a little bit these fully integrated digital processes. And one is brand new, so the entry is still very short. On October 22nd, Professor Stefan Harler will present about smart cities and protection of privacy in the smart cities environment. So we're still planning. The idea is to run it as a forum, as a panel with a few speakers. So on the one hand, the smart city data collection, on the other hand, somebody from the data protection side. That's still in the planning, but Professor Harler has agreed on the date. So the date is pretty much set. So that's it for this year. And we keep collecting interesting topics. We are in conversation about this Swiss cloud, so we're still waiting for a response there. And we have quite a long list of ideas which we plan to follow up. So that's what's coming up. And with that said, I would like to remind you again, if you have a chance, if you're interested in these MyData topics, join the organization, support it. And closing, I would really love to say thank you very much to Christian for taking the time again, walking us through this very interesting topic. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time, everyone.
And we push the beer to our next meetup then. And thanks to the audience for taking the time and joining us. Thank you very much and have a nice evening, everybody.